Today we're going to do an installation of a Horning FP240 kernel processor onto a FP240 New Holland forage harvester. The 230s and the 240s are very similar, just a little different in width, so the installation is almost exactly the same. This is some of the tools I'm going to be using today. Kind of your standard mechanic tools, torque wrench, pry bar, wrenches, sockets, tape measure, just the normal things. So the way we're going to get started is if you open your kit up, in there is all the instructions and everything you need. As we're putting it together, these part numbers will be in the book and easy to follow. You will see that there's packing lists in every box, so you can confirm that everything is there. And the parts box, I'm going to put that over here. Another checklist for the parts box, and also your instruction manual. I like to lay this stuff out so I can at a quick glance see the different lengths and see what I need, because it's crucial to put the right length bolts in the right places on this so the rolls have clearance. Now we're going to begin with step one in the installation instructions. It's page 13 in our instruction manual, and it begins with number one is remove the right hand shield, and number two is unbolt and remove the cap from the shield. This is the cap, so also we'll remove that. And also we're going to take this off. We're going to reuse this on the next piece. And this top piece, we're finished with this. This will not be reused. Okay, step number three is remove both cutter head covers. Cutter head covers is this cover up here and this cover. We are also done with this piece. It's later on in the instructions, but we're going to reinstall this hinge and turn it in. We're going to put it right back on because that's where we'll need it later. Okay, now we'll remove the top one. Okay, we'll also remove these hinges because we're going to need them later. And this cutter head shield, we're going to take these hinges off later because we're going to reinstall them on the new shield. Step number four is to remove the shields from the left of the cutter head, and I like to take these off individually because like to make a mark here on this piece, it gets cut off. But here's a little spacer you need to pull out. And this shield we will be using later. Okay, the next step is remove the cross piece above the cutter head. This is step number 5. We'll go ahead and take out the knife cover. And let's open some shields here so we can work. We're going to remove the cross piece above the cutter head. Okay, and we are also finished with this piece. The next step says remove half the knives for processing. That is strictly up to the farmer or your nutritionalist. If you remove half the knives, it takes the cut length to about a 3/4 inch of the forage. Some of the nutritionalists like it smaller, so they like all the knives in, which will create about a 3/8 cut length. So we're going to let the knives in on this particular one. Now the step number 7 is remove the small plates on each side of the cutter head. And before I do that, I like to make the mark because we're going to have to cut this piece off, and you'll see that later. So before I take this plate off, I like to go ahead and put my square on there and make the line down through where I'm going to have to cut this off on both sides. Go ahead, take off those small plates. And we do not need these plates anymore. The next step is to remove the punch outs on either side, and there's 2 on each side. Just get a punch and a hammer, and I like to use a vice grip, and 2 more on the other side. Okay, next is we remove a bolt to make room for the belt tightening bracket, and that is this one right here. Okay, as you saw earlier, I made that mark right here, so now I'm going to cut this off right up through there on both sides. The next thing is to cut an 1/8 inch off each end of the flange sharpener cover, which is step number 11. So I just take my square and a marker, 1/8 inch off each side. Step number 12 is to actually what I did before, and that was cut these corners off. This piece here, I need to take these bolts out and remove that. That's part of the left shield. So I'll take that out. And then I also need to cut off 1.5 inches from the shear bar adjuster rods. Okay, what I like to do next is not in the instruction manual. I like to take a little paint and paint the parts that I cut. Now we're going to drill a hole. It's going to be for the belt tightening bracket. The instructions says 5 7/8 from the back side of the flange, 1 3/16 from the top. I will show you where that is. Now what I like to do, take the bracket and bolt it on and make sure that I got the mark exactly where I want it. 5/16 pilot hole, 9/16 bit. And now take that small bit again and drill a hole 3/4 inch to the right. Okay, now get my wrenches and move this over. Next step is to flip the lower back hinges toward the auger, which we already did. Next step is we're going to take these nuts off and put a spacer in behind it. We're going to need some 15/16 wrenches. These spacers are provided. That is these. The number is 42427. I'm not going to tighten this back down because one of the next steps is to take this chain off. Okay, next is, since we cut off this adjuster bar, provided in the kit is 2 4/5/8 nuts, and we're just going to thread them on here and lock them together. Or if you have a welder handy, you can just put a bead of weld on there and that'll hold it also. On to step number 19. Now we're going to remove that auger chain that I talked about and the sprocket on the cutter head shaft. We're also done with this. Okay, next we're going to install the sprocket, the drive adapter, and then that pulley is going to go over top. Okay, this gets torqued to 150 pounds. Okay, here we go with the chain. And what I like to do is after the belt tightening bracket is on, I'll tighten up the chain mechanism so you can put a pry bar on it and tighten. But right now, I'll tighten up the bottom bolt here. Step number 23, the bushing can only fit in your pulley one way. It's a taper cut, so it only goes in one side. Put the bolts in through the smooth bore here into the threaded bushing. Now we'll take a little flat chisel and find the gap. The pulley is supposed to be about 1/8 inch from the chain. So we'll get it close and then we'll tighten it because that'll also draw it in a little bit more. Torque the bolts to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, the next step is to lift the processor onto the unit. These rolls are extremely sharp, so be careful as you work around it. If you can, keep the cardboard in place because any brush with your hand, it will cut you. It's very sharp. The diagram clearly shows where the bolts go, and make sure you follow the instructions perfectly because they're different lengths for a reason. You don't want the bolts sticking through where it could hit the moving parts or inhibit the flow of the silage. Just start them, I don't want to tighten them. See, here's the one, and right under here is the other one. And then the 3/4 with the washers going here and here. Okay, we have those 4 started. Now we'll go to the 3/8 by 3/4 inch and these washers. The washer number is 42378, and that gets installed right through these holes here. 2 more on this side. Okay, now instruction number 26 says to put this left shield back on. I'm going to put the lower piece back on, but not the side piece right now. We want to get the 1 inch flange bolt so it goes through in 3/8 flange nut. Now we'll install the belt tightening bracket, and also we need this 1/2 inch, this washer. The next step is to tighten all the bolts. Always like to take the ratchet and do a hand tight test on these just to make sure they're satisfactory. And then we can remove the strap. Now we're going to tighten the chain up. As I said, we get to that after this bracket's on, because then you can use a little leverage. Now we're going to put the shield back on this side. Since the processor's all tightened down, all the bolts are tight that hold the processor in place. Now, align the processor rolls, keeping them an 1/8 inch away from the left frame. This is a very important note, but these locking collars on the bearings are turned the wrong way. We do this intentionally when we ship them out. Loosen them, spin it around. I'm going to turn them all the correct way. Okay, this is very important for the locking collars. The directions say you have to tighten them the way the roll turns. So here's the belt routing, and these rolls will turn clockwise and counterclockwise. Same thing on the other side. Step 31 is to put the rear pulley on and align it, but I actually like to jump front to step 33 and align this one with that one, and then we'll align these two all together. Wow, that is really close. Okay, next, put the large rear pulley on, and that's provided, and the bushing with it. Those have to be torqued to 15 foot-pounds. Next step is the front processor pulley. Taking our 4-foot level again and lining it up. Gonna drill like a divot about a 1/16 of an inch into the shaft. There where we removed the screws, we're gonna put some thread locker on there so they do not come loose. Okay, now we go back to the ones that are on the key. I'm gonna take them back out and also put thread locker on them. Get torqued to 24 foot-pounds with a bit that is provided. On to the next step. Step number 34, install the belts. The operating instructions will give us a proper tension. Also, the belt diagram is on the processor as well. These are BB118K4 Kevlar belts, and they're also two-sided. So we'll crank this down till we have about a 1/4 inch. Belts are on, installed, and tight. Okay, step number 35 is install the air gap angle. This piece is the air gap angle. We're going to install it in underneath, straightforward like that, with the angle turned down. 2 3/8 carriage head bolts and a flange nut. The purpose for the air gap angle is for forage, you slide it forward and close it. For haylage, to increase the airflow, you can loosen it and slide it back again. Next, I'm going to install the pan. Part number is 42350. The pan goes in like this. Just lift it, slide it in, top of the auger. You want to put the latches in the set pattern. Okay, next we have to do a little cutting again. Need to cut 1 inch out of the right shield. Step number 38, we want to bolt the S2112 right shield to the original shield. Now here's where we're going to use all these 1/4 inch by 1/2 carriage bolts and nuts. Next process with this shield is to clamp the top 2 pieces together here and re-drill these holes. Next step is to install it. You can use the 1/4 by 1/2 carriage bolts that we provide. I like to use the original ones, that way they match. Right shield is installed. Okay, the next is to bend the support bracket to 1.5 inches. All right, perfect. Okay, next, we're gonna install this little bracket. It's to hold the bottom of the shield out. And this gets these 2 1/4 by 3/4 bolts and flange nuts. And for this application, I've taken the drill bit and shortened it. The reason for the short bit is we're going to be fitting right in between here. Okay, next is this guy right here is a spacer. It goes underneath there. So up through the wiring harness. Oh. Step 44, we're going to install the top front shield with the original hinges and latches. And And these I'm not going to fasten completely tight yet till we have the shield installed. Okay, next is the lower back lid. Next is the top back shield, S2115. We need 7 of these small carriage bolts. Be very careful with the end here because it's easy to drop these and they'll drop down into the rolls. We're going to install the left shield, number S2111, and we need these bolts and these 2 spacers. Oh, and these 3 washers. Each of these bolts gets a washer. Okay, that is the last of the shields. We're ready for our next step, and that is decals. Okay, very important before you install the decals to clean it. Start with the reflective strip. The instruction manual has a nice diagram of how the decals get installed. Okay, now we're going to slide the sharpener cover back in. Now, as you can see, the lid does not go down the whole way like it's supposed to. It's supposed to drop right down flat. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pull the sharpener cover back out, and right front here, cut this off, 1/8 inch maybe. So then my cut's made. See how it works. Okay, your FP240 Forage harvester is ready to go. Thank you for watching the installation of a Horning crop processor. If you have any questions or comments, the website is horningmanufacturing.com. Thank you.